1863, Abraham Lincoln was quoted saying, "Honor to the soldier and sailor everywhere, who bravely serves his country's cause. Honor also to the citizen who cares for his brother in the field and serves, as best he can, the same cause. Honor to him, only less than to him, who braves for the common good, the storms of heaven and the storms of battle." The men and women who fight for this country deserve to have someone fighting for them, for their rights, when they can finally return home. Over the last decade, the use of improvised explosive devices has resulted in a large increase in the number of traumatic injuries affecting wounded soldiers' ability to naturally procreate. Current VA benefits provide very limited coverage for veterans to get the assistance they need to make a family, such as sperm and egg retrieval, in vitro fertilization, and artificial insemination. We need to aim for revision of current law to expand benefits to aid veterans in overcoming their inability to bear children. The Wounded Warrior Project's mission statement is to honor and empower wounded veterans. One of their main purposes is to raise awareness and enlist the public's aid for the needs of these injured service members. Today, I will be explaining to you this benefits objective that WWP has been working towards for several years now. By the end of this presentation, you will fully understand the need for change. You will recognize what has to happen to satisfy the need. You will be able to visualize and appreciate the effects if the change occurs, and you will know how to help make it happen. First, let me explain the need for these expanded veterans benefits. Since 2003, almost 2,000 veterans from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have suffered from genitourinary injury that affects their ability to naturally reproduce. These injuries include pelvic fractures, amputations, paralysis, and abdominal or urogenital wounds. These are all considered to be genitourinary injuries, just meaning that it affects their ability to procreate naturally. In response to a bill proposed to expand veterans' benefits, a Washington Democrat, unnamed, said, "Because they served our country, they now can't have a family, which is part of their dream. I think we now have a responsibility not to take that dream away." The current stand on the issue reflects a very narrow-minded perspective. Many government officials and representatives do not see the need for the benefits coverage for reproductive services because they say that having children is not medically or physiologically necessary. In response to that comment, the wife of a man who was paralyzed by a helicopter crash in Afghanistan in 2007 said, "You tell a man who's just been wounded that it is not psychologically necessary to have children, when that's all that we talked about, having babies." The VA's current stand is much more positive. They say that the expansion bill is in keeping with their goal to restore the capabilities of veterans with disabilities to the greatest extent possible, and also to improve the quality of veterans' lives. And they are in full support of the legislation that would allow them to assist the veterans, but would need the assurance of the additional resources that would be required to do so. Some veterans have limited current coverage for fertility issues. It's very limited. It doesn't really help them much. Fertility counseling for couples that one or the other has been injured and cannot reproduce is covered, so they'll pay for you to see a therapist and discuss your feelings about not being able to bear children. And occasionally they'll pay for fertility testing to see if it would even be feasible for the couple to do any kind of artificial insemination or in vitro. And in very, very few cases, depending on where the soldier served and other things, they'll cover one attempt at intrauterine insemination. But with today's technology, the best way to become impregnated in this way is in vitro fertilization. Today's technology makes it the most feasible way, but it's extremely expensive, and it usually takes several tries. I didn't read about, I think 3 that happened on the first attempt. And even if it does happen on the first attempt, 4 years ago, one attempt cost $12,400, so there's not many people that can afford that without any assistance. So to realize this goal, there's a bill that's currently been proposed. It's an expansion of many different types of veterans benefits. It was proposed in February, and it does include reproductive services being covered. The bill is really long name, Comprehensive Veterans Health and Benefits and Military Retirement Pay Restoration Act of 2014. So with the support of influential organizations such as the VA and the Wounded Warrior Project, what will it take for the goal to be realized? Well, the bill was proposed with a $21 billion budget over the next 10 years. And it was proposed that the funding would come from war monies that will no longer be being used because of pulling troops out of Afghanistan. Unfortunately, in February, when the bill did go to Senate, it died there. It needs 60 votes to go through, and only 56 were obtained. And only 2 of the 56 votes were Republicans. So Senator Bernie Sanders, who's the primary sponsor of the bill, said in the response to the lack of Republican support, "You tell that veteran you think we can't afford to help him or her with fertility treatments needed because of combat injury. But when you do that, I hope you also tell him why you voted to give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 2% of earners." So what happens now that the bill has died in Senate? It can be reintroduced to Senate. Usually when this happens, there's a lot of amendments that have been made to either the budget or what's being proposed, but it has absolutely no chance of being reintroduced unless it receives more support. So the public needs to prove their support by calling your local senator and telling them how you feel about it and asking them to support the bill as well. So now I'm going to hopefully help you realize why you should call. Imagine that you have a son or daughter, and they graduate high school, they go to college, they get a degree, they meet and marry the love of their life, and then they decide to make the selfless and brave choice to join the military. And while they're overseas, say he gets shot in the back and paralyzed from the waist down. He comes home, and not only has his life been completely altered by an awful injury, now he and his wife's dream of having children has come to a rearing halt. Because of his disability, he can no longer work, so they cannot afford surgeries or methods such as in vitro fertilization. And now he has psychological problems because he can't have children. His wife and he probably have problems because they can't have children. Now imagine that same story. He unfortunately gets injured in battle, but he comes home knowing that his country has fought for him, and he and his wife have every opportunity they can to have the babies to make their family complete. Just imagine the difference that you would make in just that one person's life just by getting helping this bill to pass through. So now I'm going to tell you how to make your voice heard. How can you contact your local senator? The bill is S-1982. There's 3 ways that you can ask your senator to support the bill. The first way is that you can call the U.S. Capitol switchboard at that number, and they'll direct you to your local senator's office. If you prefer, you can go to the Senate's website and find the contact information directly for the senator's office. Or this is the method that I would suggest the most. You can go to this website, and it's just a form that you fill out explaining what bill you're asking for support for and any comments that you might have, and your contact information, and this website or this company will redirect it to wherever it needs to go. In my research, I found that this method actually ends up reaching more people than just your local senator, whereas these ways you would be speaking directly with your local senator. So, finally, I want you to think back to Lincoln's quote that I started with. "Those who cannot serve can still serve their brother that does." Stand up to the government and fight for programs that would help our wounded heroes live the best life that they can. I will leave you with a quote from President Calvin Coolidge that inspires me to remember and to stand up for the rights of our nation's heroes. The nation that forgets its defenders will itself be forgotten. Thank you.